Welcome to the Circuit of Success Podcast.
The Circuit of Success Podcast.
With your host,
Brett
Gilliland.
Brett Gilliland, Visionary Wealth Advisory.
the Circuit of Success Podcast. Let's start the show.
Welcome to the Circuit of Success. I am your host, Brett Gilliland, and today I've got Gerard Craft with me. Gerard, what's going on, my man?
How are you?
I'm great.
Thanks for having me.
You probably don't know this because I don't even know if you check your own Instagram messages, but I sent you a message in April of 2018.
Really?
I did.
That's crazy.
And now here we are. It's
Oh, wow.
January of 2024.
Well, I apologize.
That's all right, man. You're a busy
I'm not
guy.
even good at checking my normal messages, my emails, my texts.
I like to share those messages because life's about persistency, as you know, man.
Yeah.
You got to stay pleasantly persistent. But our mutual friend, Katie Collier, introduced the two of us.
Yep, thank you, Katie.
Thank you, Katie, for sure. Why don't you explain to people that are watching this right now, where are we at right now?
So we are at NOTA, which stands for None of the Above. It's our speakeasy here at the City Foundry, but we're kind of through some tunnels in the basement, hidden away.
It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Do we share how we get down here, or is that kind of a secret?
You can, I mean, there's a door up at the top on Foundry Way with a red light above, and if that light is on, then you can pop in and
Have a drink?
hopefully we have some space.
I love it. And if it's not on, it means you're just not open, or does it means it's full?
Yeah, it means we're not open.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, man, let's dive in if we can and give our listeners a little lay of the land. I told you I'd start with kind of what's your backstory of what's made you the man you are today.
Yeah. So, grew up in Washington, D.C. and, got into far too much trouble as a kid and ended up finishing school, I should say, out in northern Idaho at a school for, troubled kids. And when I was there, I got to do sort of an apprenticeship with a photographer. And so I started getting really into snowboard photography. We were up in the mountains, so it was kind of perfect for all of that. I had always been interested in photography and done a lot growing up. And so got to really, see kind of the professional side of it. And, we were doing everything from skiing and snowboarding to wakeboarding and skateboarding in the summer. And then I moved to Salt Lake City after that school to go to college and to continue my photography. And while I was there, I ended up dropping out of college. And you see a pattern of school not working out for me. But I took a job just kind of in the morning. I took a job washing cars. And at night, I took a job washing dishes and, still was doing my photography and everything. But the photography wasn't really paying any money. It was,
Right. Or a hobby.
Yeah. It was like trade stuff, trying to get in the door with different professional snowboarders and stuff like that. But really fell in love with the kitchen when I was in there. And a career advisor told me I should think about going to culinary school. And so I went to Salt Lake City Community College and studied culinary arts while I was still kind of working at this place called Fat's Grill. I mean, super high-end luxury, nothing like NOTA. This was, although it was a very clean, bar with pool hall, pool tables and But it was definitely not a real refined spot.
Right. Didn't you go on to work at one of the best restaurants in San Fran and some other places around the country?
I did not go to San Francisco.
Oh, okay.
So I from there I actually went and did a work study at the Ritz in Paris and went out to Los Angeles to the Chateau Marmont Hotel.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Ah, gotcha.
Yep.
Yeah. And so I was a sous chef out at the Chateau Marmont. And staged at a place in New Jersey for a while called the Ryland Inn, which was kind of on a 5-acre organic farm and just outside of New York City. So it was a Relais Chateau property, all tasting menus. And I think that was about the scariest place I ever worked.
What
but
made it scary?
was amazing. It was just a very intense atmosphere, and very driven people. All the people that worked there are all super successful today. So I was definitely in over my head, but in the best kind of way, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So did you look to those guys and gals for leadership and advice, or was it cutthroat and it didn't work that way? Like, what was the environment like in a restaurant like that?
Yeah, I mean, they were all like pretty cutthroat, but it was, everybody was helpful, and as long as you were trying and pushing, and so everywhere you went, you were just trying to kind of learn as much as is humanly possible.
So I'm gonna go back to when you went out from the East Coast to the West Coast to finish school. Like, what was it about you, or maybe your upbringing? I don't know what it is, but I'm always fascinated by guys and gals that do something like that and have a pretty dramatic, event happen, and then all of a sudden now you fast forward where you're at in 2024, right? Like, what do you think it was specifically about you that made you go a different route than maybe you could have gone?
I don't know. I think I've always been, a fan of the road less traveled, and I don't know if that made all the difference, but I've definitely always appreciated the struggle, and I don't know why that is, because it's probably a horrible trait,
Right.
probably something I
Like
should
the
talk to a
grind.
therapist about, but I always wanted to do things on my own, and do things the hard way for some reason. And, I think when I was looking to finally open a restaurant, I didn't want to go back. My whole family's from New York City and DC, and I didn't want to go back there and kind of fail in
Yeah.
front of everybody. I kind of wanted to, branch out on my own, do my own thing.
Yeah.
Um, and again, it worked out somehow, but God, probably not the smartest way. I could have opened in New York City around family, and
Little help.
yeah, had all sorts of family friends coming in, but thankfully St. Louis really welcomed me, so
And talk
I
about
lucked
that. So
out.
what brought you to St. Louis? I read that story. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, it was again, I was 25 years old, so I look at 25-year-olds now and I'm like, "Oh my God,
What the hell was I
like how
thinking?
was I 25?" So, wasn't always thinking entirely clearly, but I knew I wanted to do something on my own. I wanted to get out, and I had seen some stuff in, I think, like Bon Appetit magazine or something like that about St. Louis, and I think an American place had just opened. Monarch restaurant was doing really great, and I had just read about Kevin Nashin buying Sydney Street Cafe, and he had just come from like Martin Berastegui in Spain and Daniel Boulud in New York, and so I was like, "Oh, that's kind of a
Hmm.
cool city." And I used to have a weird hobby of, I still have a weird hobby of staying up late and looking at real estate,
Hmm.
and just kind of started looking at real estate in St. Louis, and stumbled upon this ad that was wine bar for sale, which, looking back at niche was not. It was dirt floors, hole in the ground, no electricity. I was like, how is this a wine bar?
Right.
But yeah, then I just kind of came here on New Year's Day uh, in 2005, and
Oh.
I literally signed it on the spot. And I remember my brother like, "Do you have a lawyer? What are you doing?"
What's a lawyer? What do I need that for?
Yeah.
Right.
So thankfully, I had my brother investing and on my side, because he was able to at least
Was he local at all?
steer me. No, my brother
Okay.
lives in London, but
Okay.
he was at least able to
Who's your
help me make
business
some
advisor?
smart decisions. My brother's like you; he's in finance,
Okay.
so
That's funny.
yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, when you think about that move, did you picture success in your mind, or was that just something you're like, this is my passion, I'm going to follow it, and then its success has happened? What was it like if you look back to the 25-year-old Gerard?
I think I always envisioned success, but I think that vision of success is continually changing,
Yeah.
right? I
Yeah.
think my first vision of success was, a successful neighborhood restaurant. And I had been eating a lot at a restaurant called Prune in New York City, and there was a place called the Tasting Room in New York, and these were kind of like very small but kind of progressive, and different restaurants, and that's kind of between that and kind of what was going on in some of the small restaurants in Paris at the time and in Spain. That's kind of where I was looking to. I think what happened was a lot different, and I think I didn't quite understand, I think, the demographics that I was going to be serving when we opened Niche. I thought we were going to be serving a lot of younger people, young professionals, and you go to New York, what do you see in a hip new restaurant? And I think I actually got a much older clientele coming from Ladue and the suburbs, and not entirely from my area, and I think there was definitely a little bit of a struggle in what people wanted out of us and what we were actually doing.
Yeah, isn't it funny when you think you get this business plan and,
Yeah.
and what's you think's going to happen, it rarely ever works that way.
Yeah, so we were successful,
Yeah.
but not in the way that we had planned on
Yeah.
being successful.
So what do you think, being the entrepreneur that you are and places like this, which is amazing, I absolutely love this, and the walk down here is one of the coolest things I've ever seen. I'm not just saying that. From an entrepreneurial standpoint, what do you think that you can share from a restaurant world to the business person or the lawyer, the whoever's watching this right now? What do you see the similarities that can be learned from your world into the business world?
Oh my God. I mean, we are in the business world, so
100%, yeah.
I think it's all applicable, really, and I think flip that around a bit. I have learned a lot from the quote unquote business world. And I think it was in 2012, we were opening Pastaria, which was our fourth restaurant at the time. And I was really, really struggling. And I was struggling to really manage them all. They were all doing really well. But all of a sudden I was managing 4 places and figured out I couldn't really micromanage 4 places.
Yeah.
And I didn't quite see it like that. I just at the time saw it as everybody sucked. and why was everybody sucking and not doing what they were supposed to do? And after a little bit came to the realization it was because I sucked.
Gotta look within.
Yeah, I sucked. I was a horrible manager, and I never really learned how to manage, right? Like in a restaurant when you're being trained as a chef, at least back then, it was, again, it was very cutthroat. It was very kind of military brigade system. It was, I'm the chef. Yes, chef. If I tell you to do something, you better fucking do it, and you better do it fast, and you better do it right, or I'm gonna be pissed. And it was a lot of leading out of fear and stuff. And I read this book called Delivering Happiness. Have you ever read that one?
Sean Anker, maybe?
Tony Shea,
Okay.
who founded, I never know if I'm saying his last name right, but founded Zappos.
Oh yeah.
And that just clicked all the time. I mean, it was sometimes you read a book right when you need to read a book.
Yeah.
And that was that book. And it then introduced me to tribal leadership. And so tribal leadership then kind of like gave that a voice, gave that a language, and we started to talk about, we, right? And your language and how the way you speak really kind of affects, everybody around you, and it also affects the way that you're acting, right? So everything's kind of like a language. And so, going from I to we was the biggest shift in our culture. And I think that's the culture part of it's the most applicable part across the board.
I love that, man, because it's so true. We talk about our firm, so is it my firm, is it our firm, and my business partner and I, we're very locked in on that one because people want to be a part of something, right? I mean, and at what point did you believe in hiring people? I look back at the amazing Claire back there who upset all this up. Hi, Claire. And in believing in other people and letting go, right? Because that was a big one for me is when you started having multiple teammates, is, coming from the janitor to the CEO, and now you've got all these people. Like, at what point was it for you? What was the aha moment? Do you recall that?
Yeah, I mean, I think this was the aha moment. I mean, I was so stressed out. I was stressed out, seriously overweight, just angry,
Hmm.
and I was just overall miserable. And I think, in reading this stuff, you knew that I had to do a better job at training people, right?
Yeah.
And it started with me, but then, as we kind of started to come together as a group, we realized that if we can train people the right way, and if we can instill our values across everybody, then everybody can kind of be thought leaders. Everybody can kind of start to make their own decisions based on those values, right? And I think that's the real key, was kind of like distilling our core values, figuring out what made us tick,
Yeah.
and then maybe how to teach people how to think like that.
Do you
a little
articulate those
more.
values to people? Like, would they be able to say, hey, maybe they're on the wall, whatever? Like,
They're not on the wall. We do our best, and we keep it pretty simple. We only have
Yeah.
five core values. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
But they can articulate those, which is a big deal. So how do you then adapt to change? So that was a change, right? So now, hey, I'm moving forward. I've got these amazing people. I'm going to be a better boss. How did you adapt to change now to take it to the level you've taken it to today?
Yeah, I think that was kind of a one foot in front of the other. I think I came back from, at that time I was on this long flight, and I came back from this trip, just charged, right? And,
Let's go.
we're going to change everything overnight.
Right,
And,
exactly.
quickly realized that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
In fact, I think when I told our now director of service, but she was a server at the time, I told her that we were, going to be making these changes. She just laughed.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Believe when I see it, dude. Whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. And rightly so, right?
Yeah. Well, but I think you got to show up every day, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing I think about when growing a business is, even on the days you don't want to show up, you show up.
And you got to walk the walk,
Yeah. That's amazing. So again, change, talk about COVID, man. That had to be, of any business, that had to be one of the biggest people, I think, in hospitality to make a change, right, during all that. What did you learn as a leader, as an owner, as an entrepreneur, as a dad? Like, what did you learn during that time frame?
During COVID?
Yeah.
Oh my God. God, that was really horrible, wasn't it?
Yeah.
No, I think we were fortunately, hitting peak culture at that time, which was awesome, because it really,
damn it.
no, I really mean it was awesome, because it really, everybody was working so well together. And I think we needed that, right? We needed that to get through. We needed everybody kind of, firing on all cylinders, thinking about everybody else, and, thinking about ourselves as one large team. And I think that's what really, if COVID taught me anything, is that works.
Yeah.
And that's really important. And you saw, I think, a lot of other businesses all of a sudden trying to kind of scramble, to work on this culture thing, when all their employees left.
Yeah.
And I
Culture
think
was
we were
huge.
in a great position, because of that.
It's funny you talk about that. Culture is, during COVID for us, it was, being in the finance world, we were able to obviously have conference calls and Zoom calls and do all that stuff with clients. But, as a leader, we had to make a decision that people weren't going to come in the office for a while. And by about July, I think it was July of 2020, so only 3 or 4 months into this, our culture said to us, we want to be back together. And so it's like, it was starting to have a negative effect by not being
Sure.
together on us, right? And so it was cool to be able to make that change and be like, all right, sign this form every day. We're not taking responsibility if you show up and get sick, because nobody knew at that time. And people started showing back up. And it was amazing how that culture and those values and that connection was super important to people, that made our culture start to go in the right direction again, which was a big moment.
Yeah, I think we kind of let everybody take it the way they were ready to take it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I think there were people that were ready to come back and work, and we all kind of, did that, and we tried to do that in the safest way possible, and worked a lot with, a lot of the community leaders, the doctors in the area. They were kind of advising us and in giving us good intel on how we could maybe do it more safely, and trying to help our friends do the exact same
Yeah.
things. And I think again, we had a lot of voices on the team, and we all worked together really well to kind of push ourselves through a really, really rough time.
So on the adapting to change, talk about niche. You've talked about the restaurant, and you decided to close it when it was booming, right? Successful. And so again, last night I'm doing my work, I'm researching you, and I know the story, right? I was in St. Louis when that happened, and like, hey, there's a successful restaurant closed, and you normally hear the other way, right? So it's a head scratcher as a business leader. This thing's working. The guy had the guts to go out there and close a successful restaurant. Walk me through that. What the hell was going on in your mind when that happened?
I think niche was always tough, right? And niche was a very tough restaurant to operate. And we started in 2005, and I think we closed it in what, 2017. So that's a very long run for that restaurant. It was a very personal restaurant, and I know that I had just passed the reins off in 2015 as chef to Nate Hereford, who now has the successful Chicken Scratch restaurant. And I just, it's such a good point that I never really wanted this restaurant to start falling backwards.
Yep.
And I never wanted to, be 10 years down the road from there with everybody being like, oh yeah, there's niche. It's still there. Like
same old thing.
It's not the hot spot anymore or whatever. I wanted it to, I wanted the legacy of niche to end right there. It was kind of like that moment.
Cool.
We had won the James Beard Award 2 years before. It was just it just felt like that time.
Yeah. Well, it takes some guts, man.
Well, I don't know if it's guts.
Whatever you want to call it. I think it is amazing. But you're right. It's like we were talking about you have a senior, I have a senior. It'd be like holding our kids back, right? Not letting them go. And I think your decision to close that has catapulted you into another level of belief and growth and expectations. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and I think it's just kind of it's allowed us to change what we do and what I do specifically for the company, as opposed to, being on the line or whatever on such a regular basis, and kind of, traveling to represent niche around the country, which I was doing all the time. This allowed me to kind of really be the CEO of the company and actually do the things that I needed to do to grow the company and to, give back to our investors and help us get to the next level.
How hard was it for you to leave the kitchen and get into, again, the boardroom, if you will? How hard was that for you?
It's still hard.
Yeah. 'Cause that's your passion, right? I mean, that's your baby.
I enjoy cooking. I really do. And I wouldn't say I'm the best CEO in the world. I know there's far better than me out there. I'm constantly trying, but it's tough to step away and just kind of do what you need to do at the time versus what you want to do at the time.
So talk about building brand. Obviously the niche group, because how many restaurants total are there right now?
God. Well, we have some shifting going on right now, so it's messing with
this will
my
air
count
the end of January
a little bit. We've Cinder House has closed, and Rockwell.
It's my favorite chicken sandwich downtown here.
So the Piri Piri, yeah. I'm sorry.
I don't know what that is, but it's some good stuff. I do a meeting there once a
Portuguese.
quarter. Every quarter I do a meeting there, an off-site retreat. So anybody listening, take your team off-site. You go somewhere, you learn, you think, you strategize. But we always went there, and that's a chicken sandwich I had every time. But
Cinder House, one of my favorite places.
Yeah.
But it's business. We we had a 5-year contract, and they're owned by Caesar's Palace.
Okay.
And they want to do something I think a little more Vegas-y.
Okay.
And
it's not your style.
Well, it's also just not me. I'm not from Vegas.
Right,
You know,
exactly. I'm not
I'm
that
not a
guy.
Vegas restaurant.
That's funny. But brands, for what strategies, maybe mindset, thoughts do you have when you think about your brands? You name your brands, you design your brands. What does that look like? What's that process look like for you?
Yeah. So a lot of research. You know, we really want to kind of dive into that world, whatever that might be. And so for the, craft cocktail world, fortunately it's one that we've been in for a long time because Taste, was one of the kind of original craft cocktail bars in the country. I mean, there was a couple dozen at the time that we opened. So, really kind of immersing ourselves in that experience and just kind of going through all the details. What does the menu look like? What do people really enjoy? What do people want? Is this a luxurious experience, or is it a kind of divey experience? Is
Yeah.
this which this is decidedly luxurious?
Yeah.
How do we want the service to be? How do we want the servers to dress? How do we want the ice to look? What is the lighting? I mean, we try to really dive into every little piece of that restaurant in that genre to try to get it right.
Big ice or little ice for the bourbon?
For me, no ice.
No ice. All right.
But if I'm drinking gin and soda, I have a thing where I actually don't like the big ice cube because I kind of want it to keep melting a little bit. Yeah. So I think the big ice has its place.
Yeah.
When you don't want any dilution, you just want it kind of cold.
Yeah.
But if you want to kind of dilute it, I like the little
All right.
ice.
I'm a big ice guy in the bourbon.
Yeah.
Not that you really care, but
I always care.
Locations. So I think for me, we have 8 office locations, and I think the hardest part is when you had one, you could walk to go get a cup of water and touch everybody in your company. Right now, with 8 locations, you can't do that, and you may go months without seeing somebody. So how do you, one, touch everybody in the company, but then number 2, how do you expect the customer service to be not necessarily the same, but high value, high customer service at all the locations?
Yeah, I mean, number 1, your manager is everything.
Yeah.
Right. Your GM is the place. Whether you think you're the place or not, like that, your GM is the person, for better or worse.
Yeah.
So hiring that person's huge. I think always trying to keep communication channels open somehow. Something that we've always kind of worked on, and we've used different things like the local company here, Bonfire, or even just kind of like WhatsApp threads, stuff like that, to really try to keep that connection going. So even if you can't be there in person, like for instance, Nashville, I can only get there usually for 1 week every 5 weeks. It used to be once a month. Now it's every 5 weeks. So you still have to kind of keep some dialogue. And so, and I'll go through different things where I'll set up one-on-ones, phone calls or group phone calls with different people to try to, again, start talking about food, talk about dishes. Let's talk about wine. Let's talk about service. Let's talk about finance.
Yeah.
So I try to connect with people at different levels at different times too. So I don't want it to always be like just me calling about why the P&L list sucks.
Yeah. Right.
But I want it to be like, let's talk about Emilia Romagna.
Yeah.
Let's talk about food.
Yeah.
And
how much do you let them decide what's on the menu?
a lot. I give a lot of leeway. Again, you're hiring professionals, and I think honesty is one of our core values, and I think that's where we get these conversations going, right? We're all very honest with each other about what's working, what's not working, what's good, what's not good. We added hospitality into those core values because I think in the early days I was not so nice about how honest I was about everything.
More delivery.
Yeah. Way better delivery.
Working
in
on
the
yourself,
honesty,
right?
yeah.
It's
But
maturity.
but it, when we first shifted our culture and we were trying to kind of like soften the culture, like that honesty piece started to go away for a little bit,
Yeah.
and that we realized how crucial that piece is, and it's really hard for people to come to if they're coming from somewhere else.
Yep.
It's hard for them to hear all that honesty,
Yeah.
and it's hard for them to give all that honesty. But yeah, I think that piece is critical when you have
Yeah.
multiple.
Yeah, the feedback's big, right? I mean,
Yeah.
if you're not open to the feedback as a leader, they're not gonna bring it up to you as well.
Yeah,
Which is
no,
tough.
You gotta be. It's
Are you good with that?
This is a fair game over here.
Exactly.
This is when you say we,
Yeah.
that means that
We give
everybody
feedback.
should be honest.
Yeah.
If you're a crappy CEO and somebody wants to tell you, why, you gotta listen.
Yeah. Yeah, and not respond, right? Listen
Yeah.
without response. So if I followed you around, my boy Matt over here follows you around with cameras, let's say for, the next week, what am I going to see day in and day out that Gerard Craft is not missing?
That I am not missing.
Yeah. Like, are there daily habits for you that are like kind of non-negotiables?
Coffee. A lot of coffee. I have to have 3 cups of coffee before I do anything in the day.
Okay.
I go through every single morning and check the shift notes. And so I see, what happened in every single restaurant the night before, from sales to who might be in that we know, what kind of regulars were in, anything bad that happened in that service.
Are they making notes that, John and Sally were in and they're
Yeah.
okay. So that just shows up.
Yeah. So it at the end of every night or end of every shift, each manager puts in their shift notes.
Okay.
And so again, that goes sales, that goes, and just what happened.
Yeah.
Give me a synopsis of what went down last night.
And what does that do for you in that moment? Do you do anything with that information, or is that more of just let's watch this, keep an eye on it, or does it actually change your daily?
Yeah,
situation?
some things might need a direct follow up. Or quick conversation. You're like, what the hell?
What the hell happened
Yeah.
last night?
Or it's just starting to kind of see patterns. This
Yeah.
where you really, just start to get a feel for what's going on. You might say, hey, I think I need to spend a little more time in this restaurant, right?
Yeah.
I need to shift more of my energy over here. Yeah. So I think that always kind of like starts my day with the direction. Then I usually look at my calendar, which I usually do right before I go to sleep, so I can set 5 million alarms, because my memory is really, really bad. So I need 5 million alarms through the day to remind me that I have something else after. But yeah, and then I usually kind of head into either my office, which is over at Bowood, or kind of pop into one of the restaurants and
Is
go
it
from there.
exercise, eating? Is that obviously with a restaurant, you eat whatever the heck you want, but does that have to be a focus for you?
Yeah, so I try to work out every other day
Yep.
at a minimum. And, that's usually on like a stationary bike trainer, or I live on some mountain bike trails. So, when the weather is a little nicer, I try to pop out on the trails,
Nice.
get outside a little bit. But that's definitely important. And when I'm not doing that, it's bad.
Yeah. Need to get out. Need to get moving.
You got to keep your
Yeah,
body
yeah.
moving.
Do you have any of those moments, like I hate to call them pinch me moments, but where you kind of like you slow down and think about some of the things that you're doing and some of the situations you find yourself in now from where you've come from to where you're at now? Because I try to do that, right? Of like this for me, this is freaking cool. Like this is really cool to do this. These are pinch me moments, is what I would call them. Like, do you have any of those moments, and do you slow down and appreciate them enough?
I'm pretty hard on myself.
Yeah.
So I'm very grateful for everything.
Yeah.
But I think it's really hard to kind of look back and just be like, oh, this is awesome,
Yeah.
when something's currently not awesome,
Yeah.
right? You're like, and there's kind of always something that is
It's not
currently
awesome.
not awesome. So every now and then I definitely try to do that. But it's tough. I do some stuff with for Team USA with Boku Store.
Oh, cool.
And those are usually pinch me moments because I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my God.
What is going on?
Thomas Keller's over there, Daniel Blue's over there, like Paul
That's cool.
Bartolotto's over there. Like, we're all just talking. And
That's
so
cool.
so sometimes, I get in those moments where I'm
Yeah.
like, I probably shouldn't be here, but somehow I
I am.
am. Yeah.
Right.
Which is awesome.
Can I give you an exercise homework?
Yeah.
So I do every 90 days. I do what's called a gratitude worksheet. Do you take a lot of pictures?
Yeah.
So I go through every 90 days, the calendar quarter. So just got done. I go through and look at every picture I took the last 90 days. And I actually write down in my journal, like what I did. Like, hey, I'm sitting over here at this thing, right? For Team USA. Pretty cool. I did this. I had dinner with friends here. And so for me, it helps me every 90 days to look back on those things that normally I don't look back on my pictures, right? And you just take them and then you never look at them again. But what it's helped me over the last 4 or 5 years is to slow down, to speed up, but slow down so I can look at all the things to be grateful for. And I find myself in moments like this knowing I can't wait to write this down on March 31st that I sat with Gerard Craft and we had an awesome kick-ass podcast, right? Like, helps me be in the moment. So
That's cool.
for whatever that's
Yeah.
worth,
I should definitely try that
maybe
out.
give it a shot. I'll text you March 31st and tell you to look at your camera. Any moments for you stick out where you like this failure or this thing that wasn't going well that sticks out for you that you want to share, that you could share, that it had a really big moment and defining moment for you?
Oh my God, how many failure
How much time
moments
do we
do I
have?
have?
Yeah.
So failure is one of our core values.
Okay.
Uh,
I love that.
yeah, well, embracing it and not to say, failing over and over at the same thing, but we all really learn from our failures,
Yeah.
right? I think I heard somebody talking recently about, kids who maybe everything was easy for them in high
Mhm.
school or something,
Yeah,
right? Like,
right.
a guy who, always had a date, who, captain of the football team,
Right.
whatever, often struggle later in life
Yep.
because they just never had to like hustle or figure it out to like get to that
Yep.
next level. And so I think so many of the failures in my life. So maybe I'm more successful because I've failed so damn much.
It's like, all right, let's give this guy a break.
Yeah, and increasingly and still do. So I think failures are always huge. I think niche was a huge lesson in failure. And I think niche, everybody looked at niche as this like trajectory from 2005 to James Beard Award, Food and Wine Best New Chef, and just kind of like just kept seeing these things rack up.
Yeah.
But I think definitely there were 2 times that we were hairs away from going out of business, that I was talking to people in New York and DC about jobs. So like I have been 2008 financial crisis
Yeah.
was definitely, it was actually probably 2010, right? So like the tail end
Yeah.
when everything I feel like in St. Louis was way harder. And they had just shut our highway down, Highway
Yeah.
40, which is like the main way to get to Niche back
Yeah.
then. And it was brutal. And, I think working our way through that, taught us a lot. I mean, it taught me a lot about finance because
Yep.
I think I did not understand finance as well as I needed to at that point. And, you learn so many of these lessons, and we call a lot of these things failure capital. And, one of our biggest failure capitals was Pirano, which we're reopening now. And it's like this stock that you have. All these failures are things to build on later. So Pirano didn't make it downtown, but here we are 7 years later, about to open, in a few months in De Pere with another one. I think sometimes things don't happen the way they're supposed to happen because of the time, right? Maybe
Yeah.
it was too soon, or something like that, So I don't know. I stack all my failures away in a file that I can kind of reach back to at any point in time.
Would you say you're a guy that do you dwell on the failure for a long time, or is it kind of bounce? Because I call it the bounce back theory, right? If I get bad news, I go to my journal. I mean, literally, it could be within the hour of like, all right, here's how I'm going to get out of this thing, right? And I try to create a plan. I'm a planner, right? So I try to create a plan of how I'm going to get out of that. Is that something that you do, or are you more of a, yeah, maybe I'll let it sit there for a while and eventually I'll think of something? Or like, how does that work for you?
No, I'm a fighter.
Okay, yeah.
Um,
So the same way, right? You're just going to put a plan together and fight. Let's go.
Going after it
Yeah.
in some way, shape. Probably sometimes I should step back.
No, but you're
take
confirming.
a deeper breath
You're-
and and really think it through. But I think in those moments, the fight or flight kind of
Yep.
comes out and you
Yeah.
start going for it.
You're confirming what I'm saying. The bounce back theory is what I call it, right? Because I've seen it now for 22 years in business. Now 300 and what I say earlier, 369 interviews later, like the most successful people bounce back immediately, right? They don't dwell on it. They don't have a pity party. They just get up and they go and they fight. And whether that's fighting or putting your plan together, whatever it is, you got to go take action and go make things happen. And that's what, again, I've seen for 2 decades now. The most successful people don't dwell on it. They go make it happen. So
I definitely have a little private pity party
absolutely.
for myself.
Say a couple cuss words,
Yeah.
Get pissed off. Let's talk about work-life integration. And most people laugh when I say that because there's work-life balance. I don't believe in that. And there's work-life integration, right? So you're opening a new place. There's no balance, man. You're probably here doing a lot of stuff, right? So how do you work on that work-life integration part in your life?
Yeah, I don't believe in work-life balance. I don't think that's
Yeah.
It's not that I don't believe or want it.
Yeah, right.
I just don't know that it's always entirely possible. You're
For sure.
I hate for people to tell people that it is.
Right.
Right? Like, oh yeah, you can be super successful and do all these things, but you're also only going to work 8 hours a day, and like,
right.
that's never going to happen.
No.
I mean, I'm sure it does, yeah, occasionally, but it's definitely the exception to the rule. And I don't know, I try to do things that I enjoy doing. I enjoy creating. I really enjoy this
Yep.
this work. I enjoy the people that I get to work with. And then I try to, like my business partner and I'll pretty much do our meetings like on a bike or
Yeah.
something like
Yeah.
that. So, that's always a great way to do it. I met up with somebody for a meeting yesterday on a bike and it was awesome.
Yeah.
So, I would say to your point of integration, that's kind of one of those types of moments. But, or, is some of the things I get to do, some of the boards I join or
Mhm.
whatever, involve some travel to some really cool places
Yeah.
and or events, in really cool places.
Yep.
So I don't know, try to have fun with it at the same time, but it's it's what you choose in life. I don't think everybody needs to choose that. And I don't think it is, I don't think being an entrepreneur is for, as is not for everybody.
No. And that's where that balance is BS, right? Because again, you could have. I just got back from a 7 or 8 days on vacation. My work-life balance was not. There was no work,
Yeah.
right? All family, but then when you got something going on, you could have a lot more work than family time. So I agree. I think it's BS, and that's why I like the integration part. How do you personally continue your passion, your drive, your purpose, staying a student of the game? How do you do that?
One, I read a lot. And that's everything from, cookbooks to leadership books. And, I try to study a lot and,
Yeah.
diving into internet, just to continue to learn whatever that may be. That may be business, that may be leadership, that may be a new recipe, that may be design, but I'm kind of always looking, always have my eyes open, always thinking. And I try to travel as much as possible because I think travel and reading have been the two biggest influences in my career, period.
72 hours from now, where are you going to be?
I'm going to be in Italy. Yeah. So I guess when this airs, I'll
Yeah,
be
you'll
back
be
from
back.
Italy.
You'll be back.
But that's, Europe's my favorite place in the world. And so getting to Italy is always a treat.
We'll have to put it on the list. How do you balance risk versus caution, right? Because this is a risk, right? The next place is a risk. But I think so many times what I've seen is people, the old saying, paralysis by analysis, right? Is you don't trust your gut. You don't trust your business partners. You don't make the decision to go. How do you manage those two things?
I probably don't manage that. I probably take I lean on the too much risk side of things, and it drives me crazy when.
So you're always looking at the risk. You're saying?
Over analytical about it. No,
okay.
I'm always taking risks.
Yeah.
I'm like, let's do it.
This,
I think
this feels good.
sometimes I should step back a little more and ask more questions. But
who doesn't want to walk down a really cool hallway to this place, man?
I mean, this was an easy one. Some are a little harder than others. But I think as I get older, I'm trying to train myself to take a little less risk. And that won't be obvious to anybody looking at all of our plans, because we're constantly opening, but it's maybe what I'm opening that shows how I'm pulling back.
Love that. So last few questions here. When you hear the word fear, I ask this question to almost everybody, is how many of the fears you've put in your mind have actually blown up to the magnitude you put them in your mind to be?
Well, that's interesting. Well, so far, none of them have.
You knocked on wood earlier, right?
Yeah, and I am a very superstitious human being.
I usually do 5 knocks on the head for some reason.
I'm 3 on wood.
Okay.
I don't know. It's a weird thing. I've probably driven Claire absolutely insane with all of those.
Well, I noticed it. I said a couple things earlier, and you did the 3 knocks on the wood, and I'm like, that guy's just like me. My second son especially, man, he does the 5 knocks on his head as well. That for some reason, that thing that works. It just puts me at peace, and I feel good about it.
Yeah, I think fear is, again, one of those things that I probably need a touch more of, and I think that quite honestly, going through the Great Recession as a business owner and going through COVID have definitely, added a little to that. They've helped me be like, hey, everything can be gone tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I think that's, some of those things are important to take into account when you're building an actual business. Like, are you really building a foundation that you can stand on, or are you just kind of building a ton of stuff on quicksand? And I think that's really my focus, for the next 5 years is all in real large foundational work.
Yep. So our name of our firm is Visionary Wealth Advisors. So a name like that, by definition, it's helping people achieve a future, right, greater than their past, and that's our mission statement: helping you achieve a future greater than your past. So when you hear those words, future greater than past, what comes to mind for you?
I mean, so my 5-year plan would kind of be just that. I think we have a pretty set vision of where we want to see this company be in 5 years, and who we want it to be competing with, and what field we want it to be playing on. And that is a lot bigger than it is today. So growth is a big part of our vision. But it's also a very, very focused growth.
Yeah, who's in that room? Like, how many people are in that room? Not necessarily names, but how many people are in that room, and what's that process look like for you to build that vision out?
Sure. So our CFO and our Chief Operating Officer, Kate Wolverton. I mean, she's really kind of like my right hand. And then the business partners, our investors.
So they're sitting here kind of deciding, here's what we're going to do. Here's how many restaurants we want to open, or whatever it may be, deciding that. And then how often are you looking at that?
All the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're constantly evaluating different deals on a regular basis. If I told people, sometimes I think it's worrisome to people because we're constantly talking about deals.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
they're like every week.
But they probably
And
come across your desk all the time
yeah,
too, right?
and so when I think at first it's really hard for some people to have those conversations, and then you turn those down or whatever. What happened to that one?
Right.
And you're like, yeah, that's gone.
Yeah, it didn't feel right.
So I think we're evaluating all the time.
So you are the chief flavor officer for the hat you're supporting there. St.
Yeah,
Louis City
City
SC,
SC.
baby. That was awesome. Great
Go
first
City.
year. So talk to us about soccer. What are you excited about there?
So funny, I was not a soccer fan growing up. I played one season of soccer
Yep.
and I sucked, and it really made me mad. I was a great baseball player at the time, and I did not like how bad I was, and so that was it for me. And so it wasn't until I got involved with Carolyn Kindle
Yep.
and Lee Brofman over at City SC.
Mm-hmm.
That I started to really fall in love with soccer.
Yeah.
And, it's been an amazing journey so far. I think I've been working with them for, I guess, 4 years
Wow.
now on this. And, we're got a lot of really exciting things planned for the next season. Season 1 was the coolest experience. I think I missed one game. I
Oh, wow.
think I was out of town, but and getting to see those games, the energy, feeling, getting to work with so many great local restaurant partners, in setting that up. It's been one of the highlights of my career for
That's
sure.
cool.
Yeah.
And talk about that real quick for the person maybe has not been there or that's from another town or city listening to this. What's different about it than, say, the traditional, professional sports stadium?
Yeah, so it's different in a number of ways. When you go to a professional stadium and you see, say, one of some local restaurant there, and there's usually maybe like one or two in that spot. Oftentimes, it's actually being run by the stadium itself, so the stadium managers.
Yep.
And so we've done things a lot different at City Park, and all of our vendors run their own stalls. So these are all, local businesses, and I think we have something like 24
Wow.
right now, local restaurant partners throughout the stadium. And quite often you see the owner of all of these businesses right
Oh, that's
there,
cool.
whether it's Steve Ewing handing out hot dogs, Lauren Nalick over there at Balkan Treat Box, and they're standing right there, working the events,
cool.
and it is really made for a unique experience because I think not only are you getting the best of the best, as far as restaurants, but then you're also getting the highest quality from those because they're doing it themselves.
Yep. Which is in line with the values of that organization, hence the
Yeah.
name of the team, right? I mean, they
Yeah.
could have chosen anything, the logo, the rivers, the arch. I mean, all the stuff that goes with that, I think is cool that they're connected to the city. And then what they've done for the city as a family is, ridiculous.
I mean, talking about a group of people who walk the talk.
Yeah.
I mean, the owners of the ownership group at City SC and everybody who works there. My main point of contact is always Matt Seebeck, and I don't know if you know him,
No.
but he's the chief experience officer
Okay.
down there. So everything you touch at the stadium, he's kind of weighed in on in some way, shape, or form, and he's obsessive. Whether it's the lighting and the music and when all the lights go out at
Yeah.
the stadium, like
Such a cool
he's
experience.
obsessing about all that stuff, and it's really cool. They have their own production team, making videos and everything, and all of those guys are like movie level producers. They're incredible, and again, all so obsessed with what they do and making that experience great. And there's just no way when you have that many people who care so much about what they're doing,
Yeah.
that you're not going to have a great
Yeah,
experience.
right. And the experience of what the fans got from the team.
Yeah, and then the team, yeah,
Right? I mean,
and then the actual
the actual
players who
players
all
on the
you know
pitch, right?
show up so big and are just also so nice.
Yeah.
You
They
know,
are nice.
you know, definitely took a page from the Cardinals and
Yeah.
stuff like that. These guys are, you know, class acts.
Yeah. So talk to us about what's going to be happening upstairs here. We're in the basement of City Foundry right now, but you got expats coming in there, right? So
Yeah.
if I say that correctly,
Expat barbecue.
Expat
Yeah.
barbecue. Talk to us about that, and that's opening sometime this summer.
Yeah. So we're looking at June opening.
Okay.
So and the tagline for expat is expat well-traveled barbecue. And you know, the idea behind it is to look through the eyes of American barbecue with a filter on it. And that filter is, how would you cook American barbecue if you were living in Spain, if you were living in Africa, you know, if you were living in China? And so, you know, what would your pantry look like? And, you know, how would you season your meat? How would you do all of that to get it close to what you wanted to cook from home? So this isn't really about trying to say do Chinese barbecue, right? That's
Right.
not our intent. We have no clue how to make Chinese barbecue. But this is about how do we use those spices to create American barbecue, like you were living abroad. And, you know, I think when you talk about those kind of like flavor transfers, you know, all of food, I've been obsessed with this kind of forever, is that all of food is connected, right? If you really, really start to look at like all the noodle dishes around the world and you don't see a connection, you're insane. You know, but you see it all over the place. You know, you look at like Mexican cuisine and the trompo for the al pastor tacos, but you also you know, go to Istanbul and you'll see the exact same thing, but with different flavors. So these techniques get kind of passed around and the flavors all get passed around. So I've always been very obsessed with travel and how that influences cooking. You know, I think the word fusion was thrown around in a lot of very bad ways for a long time, but quite frankly, you know, it is, you know, some type of fusion, and I think done with respect, it can be really really unique and really fun, I think, at the same time.
And a cool location too, right? You got a big balcony up there, or porch.
Yeah, and so this is a 3-story restaurant, and on the first floor, it's all table service, server, more like plates of food. The second floor is an event space. And then on the third floor, it's all kind of fast casual, giant bar, huge patio with garage doors, AstroTurf out there, and a stage, and, you know, more sandwich oriented. So, you know, kind of taking from the downstairs full plates of barbecue to how do we make that into, you know, kind of a fun handheld experience upstairs.
Awesome. Well, I can't wait to be there this summer. That is awesome. Last question for you. What would you tell the Gerard of the guy that was washing dishes, right? Just got out of college, not got out of college, just dropped out of college and then was washing dishes. What advice would you give that guy or the person listening to this right now, man, that may be in a spot that they think, how is that guy's success possible for me? What advice would you give him?
I would say that the work ethic you are putting in today will directly translate into to your work 10 years from now.
Yeah. You know? Awesome, man. Well, thanks so much for being on the Circuit of Success. It's been awesome having you.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's great.